everybody. Good morning, and thank you for joining us. My name is Amanda Mansfield. I'm the Senior Manager of Transportation at the Boulder Chamber and Boulder Transportation Connections. I'm going to start off with a brief introduction into what BTC is and what we're doing here today, and then I'll hand it over to Alex and her team for the actual presentation. And there'll be a chance to ask your questions and have them answered before the presentation, right after I finish, and then after as well. So again, my name is Amanda Mansfield. I think we have some background noise from one of the attendees. Don't mind muting yourselves. That would be beautiful. Thank you very much. Senior Manager of Transportation, Boulder Chamber, Boulder Transportation Connections. Boulder Transportation Connections is your local City of Boulder transportation management organization. Our goal is to help employers and employees come up with programs that will allow them to commute sustainably, affordably as well. And we also partner with transportation leaders from the county, the city, RTD, CU Boulder, et cetera. And today we are partnering with the county, CDOT, and RTD to give you all sorts of valuable information about this important Colorado 119 corridor project, and to get your input on how the design of this project, particularly the bikeway and the BRT line, can best serve you and your employees in terms of commuting and traveling in general. So I will hand it over to Alex, and I will be womaning the slide deck, and I will also be keeping an eye on the chat. So you feel free to not only verbalize your questions and comments, but put them in the chat as well. Does anyone have any questions or concerns, tech or otherwise, before I hand it over to Alex? Wonderful. All right. Here we go.
Thank you, Amanda. I would think I was the one with the background noise. There's lawnmowers going on, and I can't get my headset to work. So I am sorry about that. Hopefully they'll stay away for while I am talking. Thank you all for joining this call. This is really good to talk directly to businesses, because this is a lot about commuting, and the bikeway in particular. Well, the bikeway that I'm working on is designed as a commuter bikeway, but the whole thing, the whole corridor will be really changing, and we wanted to get your input. If you can go to the next slide. Oh, I actually forgot to do my formal introduction. I'm Alexandra Phillips. I'm with Boulder County. I'm the bike planner. I'm also the county's public engagement lead for Colorado 119, the diagonal projects. And earlier, when Amanda first organized this meeting, she sent out a couple of questions that we're interested in hearing. If you are having any trouble finding workers due to commuting challenges, either bus or what other? Rose, did you have to? Oh, okay. And then you can see the other questions on the screen. Problems encountered because of the high cost of transportation, especially with gas going up. And what do you think? Do you think your employees would benefit from a faster bus service? And then about riding sections of the bikeway. A lot of people, when they first hear about the 9-mile long bikeway, they think, oh, I'm not going to ride 18 miles round trip in one day. Some people will, but it will be making a wonderful connection between Boulder and Gun Barrel and some other very shorter distance mileage. And it'll be completely separated from traffic. So we're wondering what improvements we can do to the design we have for that, and what improvements we can do for the rest of the project as well. If anyone has anything to comment on, any thoughts about these questions, we'll be revisiting these questions at the end as well, after we go through the presentation of the design for the 119 corridor. Is there anyone that has thoughts on these questions? Okay, well then I'll keep moving on, but feel free to interject. You can go to the next slide. And I think I was going to cover this one too, just real quickly. Was that correct, or was that a nana? I don't want to cut anyone off.
I believe Yeah, if you don't mind.
Yeah, Adnana, just before you go, Adnana, she'll introduce herself, but we've been working very closely together on all this with CDOT. A lot of different partners are very important to this whole project: CDOT, RTD, City of Longmont, City of Boulder. So thank you, Adnana. Go ahead.
Thank you, Alexandra. That's definitely a great bonus here that we're all working together on these two projects and making this corridor a really great project, and hopefully a lot safer for everybody, as we'll tell you more about throughout the presentation. So again, my name is Adnana Murtic. I'm with CDOT. I'm project manager for the Colorado 119 Safety and Mobility Improvements projects. Again, we are here today on behalf of these two projects, Safety and Mobility Improvements Project and the Commuter Bikeway. And our projects are focused on Colorado Highway 119, or the diagonal highway between Boulder and Longmont. But as you will see later, they tie into greater RTDs, BRT connectivity beyond this corridor into the City of Longmont and City of Boulder. We are planning numerous project elements as part of these two projects. There's going to be intersection improvements, transit improvements, as well as this bikeway, and we'll go through those details in a little bit more, in-depth explanation as we go through this presentation. Next slide, please. Currently, Colorado 119 is the highest crash corridor in the county for motorists and second highest for bikes. And during a 5-year period from 2015 to 2019, there were over 900 vehicle crashes, 17 bicycle crashes, and 2 pedestrian crashes. They resulted in 4 fatalities. And our projects are designed in a way to reduce those crashes and make the corridor a safer corridor. And over the 20 years following the implementation of these improvements, it is expected that over 370 vehicle crashes will be prevented, and even better, the construction of the bikeway is expected to eliminate nearly all bikeway crashes. Next slide, please. Again, the corridor lacks a safe, direct way to travel from Boulder to Longmont by bike, and current Bolt bus service can be sometimes slow and unreliable, and which means in return that many people choose not to ride a bus. And corridor currently has safety and mobility challenges, and as the region grows, these challenges could only get worse. Again, these two projects are designed to address these challenges and improve mobility. And the new commuter bikeway is a safe, direct way for people to commute. RTD will be implementing new bus rapid transit service on this corridor, which is expected to cut transit travel times in half, and hopefully in return increase the ridership. And these projects are designed to mitigate those challenges and enhance travel choices. And now I'm going to go back to you, Alexander, to tell us more about bikeway and its elements, please.
Okay. I think there's a second slide, another slide to go to for. Yes, here, thank you. So the bikeway is going to be almost exclusively in the median between north and southbound 119. And that really helps the entire project because that median is all owned by CDOT. So we didn't have to acquire any right of way. We just had to partner with CDOT to do this great project. So it'll be fully separated from the road, plowed in the winter. So it'll be a year-round facility. There'll be underpasses at the major intersections. I'll talk more about that in a minute. There'll be direct connections to the bus rapid transit stations. E-bikes will be allowed. And it's, of course, ADA accessible. Most of the path will be 12 feet wide except for in certain sections it will actually get wider. The photo on the right is US 36 bikeway, if you're familiar with that. It'll be a lot more like that type of bikeway than such as if you're familiar with Boulder Creek. We're designing this bikeway to be truly a commuter bikeway and have as few curves as possible. The only curves that will be in it is to align it correctly when it needs to be connecting to something or to avoid wetlands. Next slide.
I have a question. In terms of the e-bikes versus people that are going to use it as a regular bike, are you going to have a speed limit on it?
Thank you for asking that. That is something we're spending a lot of time talking about. We're probably not going to go with a speed limit. What we're probably going to do at this point is stripe down the middle of it for certain sections. And then as it comes into where more people are going to be, especially through the station areas, we're going to try to encourage the faster cyclists, whether it's e-bikes or regular bikes, to slow down, because that's where there'll be lots more people. Out on larger sections, long sections of the bikeway with the 12 feet, it should be plenty of room for people to pass. But we are working to figure out how to negotiate through where there's going to be more people, because we know that for most people, including myself, I don't want to be passed really closely in tight areas with, I'm a slow cyclist. And then the faster cyclists want to go fast to be able to get to work or wherever they're going quickly.
Well, I mean, and you just have this issue between cyclists who are going to use it to cycle, and we know that's going to happen, versus commuters who are not maybe as well versed on how to navigate the e-bikes. And so when they get in these situations, I have a concern about everybody's safety. Maybe if there's not some kind of natural governor in place in these intersections.
Yes, thank you for that comment. And the key is to come up with, you use the term natural governor, like what is that? What works? What would work? So we're looking and we're thinking of the best ways to approach that. Thank you. And also, I am also hearing those same concerns from the Center for People with Disabilities, lots of concerns about the different speeds. Next slide, because I think the next slide will actually, this one actually, no, it's a few more. It'll show how the different widths of the bikeway, and I'll go back to that in just a minute. This shows all the different connections that you can make from the bikeway into Gun Barrel, into the city of Boulder, into onto Airport Road, and into Longmont. There's a lot of the different bike networks that you can connect into, and you can almost think of this bikeway as closing a big gap between lots of the different bike networks in the city of Boulder and the city of Longmont. And it also shows those little light kind of aqua blue squares are where the proposed bus rapid transit stations are going to be. So it'll give us lots of connections.
So are these planned connection points here, or are they places you could potentially connect?
Well, for example, I think so on J Road, there's already the buffered bike lanes, and you'll be able to enter the bikeway or exit the bikeway. I'll show that slide in just a moment, to J Road. And the same thing with the other connections, the Airport Road.
Yeah, well, so for instance, there is no connection. I'm just looking at, near 63rd there, not where 63rd crosses, but between 63rd and Niwot. Right now, the diagonal goes over that bikeway, but there's no way to get in. The other thing is connecting the bikeway to the actual tech. So we're in the tech center, Gun Barrel Tech Center. And right now, if you would have to, there's no direct connection into the tech center there. Anyway, on 70, near 71st, that's the only thing there. So
Oh, on 71st, so that you're not just north of 52 of your
no,
office.
if you look at between 71st and 63rd on your map there, right in the almost dead center, south of 52, where that's the Gun Barrel Tech Center. And so there's that trail you show in green there that goes under to the res, which is great. That's they just put that little part new, but there's nothing into the actual tech center. There's no way to actually access the tech center unless there is a trespassing bridge that we do across the ditch, but otherwise you got to go up to 71st. Anyway, that's just my input would be connect the trail into the tech center there. And the same would be, there's a tech center at 52, Boulder Tech Center, I think it's called.
Yeah. Thank you for mentioning all that. So the other thing that we're working with Commuting Solutions, who's done what's called a first and final mile study. So it's basically like how to get from the first and final mile to your office from whatever, or what your destination, I should say, from the infrastructure. So I'll look into that and see what the connection is. There is, as you probably know, on 71st, there is now a side path connecting to the Lobo Trail, paved side path on one side, and there will be.
Yeah, that's only halfway down the road.
Yes.
So that's really nice. I will say they didn't plow it in the winter. As a bike commuter, I will tell you that I commute along this route. They didn't plow that in the winter. I don't know if they're planning on doing it this year, which made it difficult to use. But it'd be nice, instead of having to go all the way down 63rd to 70 to look out to 71st to go in, to be able to access it directly from, because it's only like, a few hundred yards from diagonal to the back of the tech center drive. And there's actually a road there that's gated off. So so anyway.
Thanks. We do need to move on, but
yeah,
Doug,
sorry.
stay in touch with this.
Yeah, we will.
I'll give my email at the end, and we'll talk about this. Thank you. That's exactly the kind of thing we're doing. The reason why we're doing these presentations is to get that kind of feedback, to make those connections. Next slide. So there's going to be underpasses at J Road, Niawat, 63rd, 52, and the underpass. So this gives you an example of what the underpass will look like, and also how at the underpasses will be spur connections up to the roads. And at those spur connections or intersections, there's also going to be an intersection with 4 Mile Creek Canyon Trail. When there are intersections, the path will go from a 12-foot path to a 16-foot path to make the intersections, give people more room to navigate through the intersections. And I'm hoping that will partly address the issue of all the different speeds.
And will the underpasses be lit? Will there be lighting?
Yes, in the underpasses, yes. And during the day, because sometimes when you get into those underpasses on a very sunny day,
it can be dark.
Like a black closet, dark closet. Yes, there will be lit at the underpasses, correct. Next slide.
If possible, when you guys ask questions, if you could identify yourself for note-taking purposes, that would be wonderful.
Okay. I'm Pierre. I'm Pierre. I moved to Boulder exactly 2 weeks ago, and so I'm trying to figure out my commuting situation. And I met Emily, and Elaine from BTC at the Bike to Work event that I was volunteering at, and So they inspired me, and I thought, oh, well, I should find out what's going on with, what my commute might be like. So here I am. So sorry. Yes. So good underpath lighting.
Okay. Thanks. That kind of introduces my next slide, which is all the different things that the commuter bikeway has to go over or under to build. And some people say, just why is it taking so long? Why is it taking so many years to design this bikeway? And this is part of it. We have to cross over water. There'll be bridges. You can see where the B's are for the bridges. There'll be the street level crossings. If I say at-grade crossing, I slip. That's what I mean, a street level crossing. And there'll also be the underpasses. Next slide. And the underpasses, again, at the underpasses, the path will become the 16 feet, go from 12 feet to 16 feet to accommodate people going through the underpasses. Next slide. And here is another thing that we spent a lot of time on, and like your input on this. There will be street level crossings. And we're looking at, one way that we look at this from a design perspective is the green triangle is kind of the sight triangle, what people can see as they are approaching this. So there's the cyclists needing to see the motorists coming up, and the motorists needing to know that they need to yield to the cyclists, and there'll be a raised crossing there that will indicate to the motorist to slow down. The raised crossings, there's a whole bunch in Boulder that you may be familiar with. There's probably some in Longmont, but I can't say exactly where, but I know all along Broadway and Table Mesa, there's some raised crossings. There will also be the signage and the list of places where there'll be the street level crossings. Next slide. Oh, and then this is where I think I hand it over to Ali, if he's here.
I'm here.
Our partner when RTD. Thanks, Ali. Good to see you.
Good to see you as well. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ali Iman Sapahi. I'm the RTD project manager for this project. The map shows the vision for the bus rapid transit, or BRT for short, connecting downtown Boulder to North Longmont. BRT is, as opposed to the traditional bus service, is a high frequency, high quality bus service. It's much more reliable and faster than those traditional bus services. A good example of that would be the Flatiron Flyer. That is been in service since actually July of 2016. I was involved in that project too. That connects downtown Denver to Boulder. So this is going to be somewhat similar to that. Of course, we have signalized intersections. It's not a freeway setting, but the idea remains to be the same. The safety and mobility project, which is this project, we're going to be designing a bunch of improvements as far as BRT is concerned, including new stations, queue bus bypass lanes that I'm going to get into in one of the slides that is coming up later, and then the parking rides to support the future BRT service. Over time, this service will replace the current Bolt route. When we transition from Bolt to BRT, to the new BRT, we will remove the current bus stops that are on the right side of the intersection. Right side of the intersection is throughout the diagonal right now. And the new stops, the BRT stops, will be constructed in the median. As far as roadway improvements in the diagonal, as part of this project, we'll be implementing a whole slew of them, from small scale to large scale, to basically improve safety and traffic flow in the corridor. We will be upgrading the traffic signals, implementing new signing and pavement markings, provide lighting at the intersections, parking rides, and the bus platforms, making the traffic signals better synchronized as part of this adaptive signal system that I'm going to get into a little bit later. We're physically configuring, we will be physically reconfiguring Colorado 52, which is also known as Mineral Road on the east side of the highway and IBM on the west side. And another example of these improvements is eliminating left turns from Airport Road and Oglala to make the intersection safer. Next slide, please. Intelligent Transportation Systems, or ITS for short, is basically about integration of technology into the roadway project. A lot of what we're doing here is to put the hardware in place for CDOT ITS office to disseminate real-time traffic and traveler information to the public and to the media. This includes closed circuit TV cameras that you've seen all along the roadways for providing that sort of real-time information, so the traveler makes better informed decisions while they're on CDOT's cotrip.org website, and they could see all of this information. Variable message signs, we've seen a bunch of those. You see them in this slide too. Provides all sorts of PSA or traveler or traffic or weather related information. And then the road and weather information stations, again, a piece of the hardware that is supporting this cause, along with automatic traffic recorders that provides live traffic volume and speed to CDOT ITS office. And one other thing that we're implementing in this corridor is adaptive signals, which I touched on earlier. This is a state-of-the-art system that continuously monitors the traffic conditions, and as opposed to traditional signal systems that have like AM and PM and off-peak timing plans, this one continuously adjusts those timing patterns based on the real-time live traffic conditions. It also reacts to traffic accidents, special events, and roadway constructions to make this happen. Transit signal priority is that last piece. Now that's very RTD specific technology, which slightly alters the traffic signal timing pattern by communicating via a cellular link like you see on the slide. Tells the traffic signal, hey, I'm close to the intersection, hold that green phase until I pass through the intersection. This obviously has tremendous savings benefits to the bus. Next slide, please. The cube bypass lane is the technology we're going to be using. I'm going to let the video, I believe this is a video link, play, and I talk through it, where the bus basically way in advance. This graphic shows only, so much of it, but it gets into that left cube bypass lane, makes it to the stop, alights and boards passengers, makes it to the intersection, gets its own priority signal, as you see, ahead of the general purpose traffic, crosses the intersection, and then safely accelerates and safely maneuvers back into the general purpose lane. We could play that again if you want, but that's basically what happens. So you see the bus comes into the Q bypass lane. This could be 3,000 feet ahead of the intersection. So we're just trying to show everything here. See, this is the stop. People get off and on the bus. The bus pulls up, gets its own signal. Everybody else is still at red phase, and then through the intersection, and then merges back onto the general purpose lane on the left side. And with that, I'm gonna hand it over to Stephen.
Awesome. Good morning, everyone. I guess, yeah, we can go to the next slide first, but my name is Stephen Humphrey. I'm the consultant project manager for this 119 Safety and Mobility Improvements project. Ali kind of walked you through all the different improvements that are taking place in the corridor, and now hopefully I can talk you into some of the specifics at a few different intersections in the corridor. Don't know if we have time to go through all of them today, but we tried to highlight 3 of the key intersections, and we're going to start here with the 63rd Street intersection. So here's where you see that example of a BRT station and park and ride, like Ali just mentioned. On the west side of the screen here, you can see in the median, we've got the 2 stations, both on the same side, and that proposed parking lot at 63rd. Also, you can see we've got pedestrian connections to the stations, to the bikeway, and to 63rd Street. We'll have drainage, water quality, and other detention improvements in this area. And then it seems kind of minor, but we also have an adjustment to the 63rd Street stretch between the 2 intersections of 119 that you can kind of see here on the screen. We're going to have to be constructing a left turn lane there to allow access in and out of the new parking lot at 63rd. As we keep going through the list of improvements here at 63rd, you'll see kind of in the pinkish red color, those bypass lanes that Ali mentioned and showed the video. And then we'll also have a lot of those improvements that he mentioned as far as upgrading the signage at all these intersections, the roadway striping, the lighting in this area, which will be great both from a safety perspective and otherwise. Upgrades to the traffic signals, and then those adaptive and transit signal priority items that Ali mentioned as well. And then, you know, a lot of focus both from the bikeway side and our project team side on all the different connections in the corridor. So how pedestrians and bicyclists will access this area, including those first and final mile connections that I know were already brought up. We're still working through that process. We're still trying to figure out final plans, but just as an example, some of the stuff you can see here, we've got the existing bike lanes that'll remain along 63rd, but then we're also going to be constructing that 10-foot multi-use path that's just along the west side of 63rd as well, to try to give folks some options. We're also looking at locations of crosswalks and sidewalks, and some of those other connections still need to be reviewed and kind of finalized. And then again, as Alexandra mentioned, you'll notice here at the intersection, we've got an underpass, we've got those spur connections that she mentioned. And, you know, I guess one of the things I just kind of want to highlight for the entire corridor is that, you know, we need to have both a today and future vision for those connections. I think there's some improvements that will be done associated with this project to improve connectivity, but then I think there'll also be some planned future connections, and the project team is trying to both plan for the things that are going to get built today and the potential additional connections that will happen in the future. And maybe I'll pause here for a second. I think there were some questions. I'm not really sure how we're formatting today's discussion, if we want to answer those now or wait till the end.
Amanda, you're muted.
The plan was to allow people to bring up questions during the presentation as well. So thanks for catching those questions. So Kirsten had a question about the stop at 47th and the impacts it would have on her org. And then Melanie, after that, asked if there's any plan to adjust the merge lane on 63rd at the crest of the hill as you're heading towards Coot Lake. So you can start with Kirsten's question.
And I can just elaborate a little bit because I'm with UCAR and NCAR, and you know, we provide eco passes to all of our employees, and our concern is that loss of that stop at 47th. The next one is like, I think like another mile or over a mile. And, you know, for the people that are taking the bus, I just, you know, it's going to be a huge loss to not have that stop for our Center Green and Foothills campuses.
Yeah, and I think Ali with RTD is going to jump in and answer your question here, so I'll get out of the way.
All right.
So what happened with that stop was based on the planning and environmental linkage study that was done and finalized in 2019, it was for the period of 2 years with all the constituents, the stakeholders. We met and we came up with a number of stops for the BRT. This is not the Bolt route, so it's supposed to be a lot faster than the traditional service and has less stops. Everybody, like I said, all the stakeholders thought this out for, I don't know, however many meetings we had, and came up with all the stops that you see in that document. There are, I think, a total of 23 of them, including what the 3 that we're talking about here in the diagonal, and then the rest of them are in Boulder and Longmont. Having said that, we need to get a formal request from the city to look at having additional stops, move-in stops, and review them case by case. But the numbers have to justify having a pair of BRT stops on 47. That's what I'm saying is exactly like, I'm just saying, like, we have to have a case-by-case analysis for all of these to see if it's justifiable. Right now, looking at those numbers, there's hardly anybody there for Bolt route to pick up. And I know we are in the post-pandemic world, and things are different, and things are hopefully getting better as far as transit is concerned. But sure. We just have to analyze it. We would thoroughly study it to make sure stops are justified.
Yeah, just because there is just like such that huge gap. I mean, I just think, you know, for people that this is their only form of transportation, we could be losing out on employees or visitors, which that's their only form of transportation, because we have, you know, visiting scientists from all over the world that it's like, I don't know if they're going to come back like another mile and a half to get back to work. And how is that going to work, you know? So you say a formal request through the city is like what we would need to do to just have that.
Right,
even,
basically,
you know,
that's how we would react to like any request, really.
Okay.
For that.
And may I add something quickly, Kirsten? So as Alex and I mentioned, we'll send out a link to this PowerPoint and a way for you to provide more input after the meeting, but we'll also follow up with you. So to the extent that we can address these kinds of questions that involve next steps, you can expect a follow-up.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think that all sounds great, and I think there's a path forward to follow up with the city and then work that through the process. I do think I saw some emails leading up to this conversation, and one thing I did want to attempt to kind of explain is we are presenting this project, and we have all kinds of different elements of the project. And some of the elements of the project are actively in the planning and design phases, where, as Alexandra often says, you know, we want your input, we need your input, we want to take your input, and we want to make changes. I do want to say, though, that there was, as Ali mentioned, a 2-year planning and environmental linkage study where a lot of input was taken, a lot of feedback was provided, and key decisions were made, like the location of these BRT stops, that we're taking and building upon all the outreach and engagement that took place over those 2 years and implementing it. And it's not quite the same, you know, simplistic nature of, well, this should tweak here and let's make a change. It's more of a formal process, and it's sort of going back on 2 years of planning that took place. So
sure, I'm sorry that I just wasn't at the organization. You know, I mean, we just missed that opportunity, but now it's like been brought to our attention. We're like, whoa, you know, I mean, so yeah.
Your concern is very valid. Your concern is very valid, and I'm not trying to take away from that. I'm more trying to point out the distinction between like where we're taking input to make changes with the design and where it's going to be a little bit more of a process or more problematic at this stage in the game. That's all I'm trying to distinguish. So.
Sure.
Cool.
And this is Karen with BTC, and I just wanted to weigh in on that point too, because I guess I'm curious too if there's some thresholds as far as boardings and alightings, like what's the threshold point when it is determined, and then a couple other pieces. So diagonal crossing, I don't know how many units offhand right there, but that wasn't online. There weren't residents living at diagonal crossing back in 2019. I'm wondering if that was taken into account. and yeah, as you know, the because with post-pandemic, it's like trying to predict what the actual ridership would be. And, you know, I totally hear you on the public input process. You know, we're trying to, you know, honor what was done, you know, 3 years ago. At the same time, recognize too that not everybody that's on this call today was involved with that process 3 years ago too.
Totally. And I think Ali nailed it, right? Like, I think if this group could please advocate to the city of Boulder, and if they're supportive of a stop at that location, if they can advocate to the entire stakeholder group for the BRT line here, then I think a process can be started to do exactly what you just outlined in terms of evaluating that location today and the potential ridership, and then a decision can be made. I don't think we can answer any of those questions today about thresholds or the numbers. That's more of a service planning type operation, I think. And I don't know that we have anyone from service planning on the call. I think that's more of a, let's get the city of Boulder to support it and elevate it, and then we'll go through the process.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Now we have a new question from Doug, but let's allow Melanie to expand on her question, which is there any plan to adjust the merge lane on 63rd at the crest of the hill as you're heading towards Coot Lake? Melanie, do you want to expand, or does that capture it?
Hi, yeah, so I'm Melanie Sidwell with the Western Interstate Commission for Higher Education, otherwise known as WICHE, and we're in Boulder off of Foothills in Valmont and the Center Green area as well. But I've been driving this path since 2008. I worked for the University of Colorado for the last 13 years before joining WICHE last year. And so that where your photo or your depiction is, where 63rd is towards the upper right quadrant of your image, those two lanes, like I think the left lane becomes a left turn lane at the top of the hill, and that right lane is also like a merge lane from 119, and also taking traffic from the other lanes on the bottom of the photo towards Coot Lake. And it gets really aggressive sometimes where people are crossing both lanes of the diagonal heading up towards that hill at the intersection there. And I can't tell you how many times I've almost been run off the road by people trying to, I know it's supposed to zipper, but that crest of the hill like area where it starts to merge or people are turning left, it gets a little dicey. And I was just curious if there was any discussion about that component at all, or if that's going to remain the same with this new configuration below that part of 63rd.
Yeah, I'll start with an answer, and then Anana can jump in, please. But I think the short answer is we're not looking at a whole lot of improvements outside of CDOT's right-of-way. The funding and the scope of the project we have is for the state highway, which is 119. My understanding, and I always mess this up in this area, is that stretch of 63rd outside of the right-of-way, is that city of Boulder, or it could be, yes. I believe it's city of Boulder.
Yes, it is.
So I think the short answer is we don't have anything specific planned today. The longer answer that is something we can certainly do is engage the city of Boulder. They meet with us weekly, monthly, whatever, about this project, and see if they might have any funding or scope or ability to help support some changes there at 63rd. That's not something that CDOT can easily do, is work on other jurisdictions' roadways. I think you're spot on about your concern, though, and I know we did look at some options when we were trying to figure out the best location for this parking lot and the turn lanes between the two intersections at 119, that considered using, a turnaround up there, and we were just afraid that would make things even worse. So we tried to stay away from even considering anything like that. But your concern is certainly valid, and something that I think we could have a discussion with the city of Boulder about whether or not they might have resources to bring to the table to help support making changes there.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. I usually turn onto 63rd to avoid the traffic pileup on 119 and take the back roads, because I live in Southwest Longmont. So I try to kind of snake behind 119. So I'm very curious to see how these solutions could alleviate some of that backup. But I also all of our employees at Witchy get an EcoPass. And I'm in a PhD program at Boulder, so I also have an EcoPass as a student. And it's been challenging because I would like to use a bus, and it does that first and last mile, as we all talk about, gets a little, doesn't quite connect the dots for me. So I'm curious, I'm very interested to see if this will help that. So thank you so much for sharing your information today.
Yeah, you bet. And the glass half full of me would say that hopefully when we're done with all these improvements, your drive will be a little bit better. But I digress. Chrissy has her hand up, so maybe she's got something to add.
Kind of. I have a clarification question. So first off, this call is fabulous to kind of hear sort of people's lived experience. So I'm really enjoying hearing this. Some of the next step seems to be like talk to City of Boulder. Stephen, is the plan that kind of people find City of Boulder? Do they send emails to your team and then that gets pushed to City of Boulder, or is there an email they get, or kind of how does that work? What is that chain? Do we know?
Nana's got your answer ready for you.
Okay, cool.
I'd like to join this conversation.
Yeah, please.
So what you said, Stephen, is absolutely right. We can definitely talk to City of Boulder and talk about this situation. So I just want to share real quick the practice that I have seen within CDOT when we have situations like this one. And I absolutely understand your concerns, Melanie, at this intersection or any intersection that is not safe for that matter. And then we usually receive emails, and then there is an, organizational email where you can submit your concerns directly to our traffic unit, and then we look into those. And then if we definitely taking input from citizens and then evaluating the situation. So I would just suggest maybe doing the same. Again, we will talk. We will take gladly that task to talk to City of Boulder. However, maybe there is a additional thing that you can do and submit that concern directly to them. So that way they have the direct input from people who are using this intersection and take into consideration that safety or not safety safe area. So that's just my suggestion here.
Perfect. And Nana, at the end of the call, or at the end of the presentation, we have sort of the project's contact info. Is that an okay way to start that process, or would you suggest a different one we can like throw in the chat or something?
We probably should find City of Boulder direct a way to connect with them and talk to them directly. I'm sure they have also a traffic department who need to be aware of the situation, because sometimes, if you're not using certain area or intersection or roadway, you're not aware of what's happening. And until we hear back from people who are driving through there and using that on an everyday basis, like Melanie mentioned. So, yeah.
And I'll just reiterate, just so it's clear, in terms of getting people the relevant City of Boulder contact, and just in general following up on questions and concerns that involve next steps, we will follow up with attendees. We're taking notes about your questions and comments. So, your comment will have a continued life beyond this meeting.
Perfect.
We also have a question from Doug, unless there's more comments around that. Okay.
And I don't want to push Doug's comment off, but our next slide is about Colorado 52. So perhaps we go to the next slide and walk through that, and maybe we might even be able to answer his question. All right, well, I'll keep moving along. So what you see on the screen here on this slide is the existing intersection configuration at Colorado 52 and 119. And you can see today it's one big intersection where northbound 119 and southbound 119 are together. And I just want to show this image for some perspective. And if we can flip to the next slide, you'll see our proposed improvements. And I hope you can still kind of see in the background the outline of that existing intersection and the change that we're going to have here at this intersection, and the separation between northbound and southbound. It's probably not surprising. This is one of the more significant sets of improvements we're going to have in the corridor. And I think some of the conversation may already answer why we're looking at a change like this here at 52. One of the bigger challenges in the corridor is the really long queuing that we've been talking about, where cars are queued back, 1,000 feet, 2,000 feet, 3,000 feet from the intersection. And that does create safety concerns when you have folks traveling 55, 65 miles an hour, and they're not expecting to have to come to a stop, a half mile or a quarter mile before an intersection. And that can lead to rear end crashes, which is a lot of the crashes that we see that have happened in the 900 or so that Adana pointed out. So there was a pretty detailed and extensive traffic analysis study that was completed for the corridor. And specifically, there was a lot of thought and options put into what's best to help improve operations, reduce that queuing, and how to best improve the 52 intersection. And this is what came out of that as the preferred recommendation. And so, as you can see here, we're realigning and separating the two intersections, and I'll call it secondary benefit of all these really great roadway improvements and intersection improvements is that we're able to continue with a similar bikeway configuration in the median. We're able to put in an underpass and those bikeway connections in the median here, which we wouldn't have been able to do had the intersection stayed together. And we're also at this location constructing BRT stations. In this case, you've got one on the east side of the intersection and one on the west side. I know it's technically like southeast and southwest. You guys will forgive me. Diagonal's tough with directions. But anyway, at this location, we'll also be constructing those queue bypass lanes. The intersection improvements won't eliminate the queuing at this location, but it'll reduce it. And then the bypass lanes will further allow for that rapid bus service that we've been talking about. And then, of course, at this location, we're going to have a lot of those same roadway and traffic improvements we discussed, and a multi-use path that'll be constructed. And maybe we can follow up with Doug now with his question, but we are looking at how those connections will be made to the IBM facility today, perpetuated throughout and across the intersection here. And then we're also looking at how we can connect into the Colorado 52 corridor has a multi-use path planned along it on the north side or the right side of 52 as you're looking at this graphic, and how we can set ourselves up to connect to that future multi-use path along 52. So Doug, I don't know if you can elaborate or have other questions I can answer.
No, I think that's good. And I also think, and with, for folks, and if you haven't done it, ride along 119 on a bike, and when you're riding a bike, it's different than a car, and you're looking for the path of least resistance, and you may not have intersections exactly where the car intersections are, because of it's shorter walk or less exertion. So that's just something to think about when you're designing these connections. Because for us, if there's not a connection into the business park here, I don't see a huge pickup. We have a lot of shift workers. We have a lot of, hourly workers that, work different shifts. I don't see a huge pickup of people wanting to ride their bikes if, they're going to have to do an additional 4-mile trek along roadways just to get into the business park. So that's just something to think about.
No, it's a good point. I'll let Alexandra speak to it, but I think the point I've been trying to kind of hit home is from the CDOT project side of this, we're trying to set everything up so that if we can get those connections made to the right of way, there's a logical process and a thought to bringing those connections through the right of way. And I know, as Alexandra previously mentioned, there's a first and final mile study that was purely focused in on how do we make those good connections to the corridor and to the right of way. I don't know that there's the funding or the projects in place quite yet to make every last one of those connections. That's part of the ongoing process of building out the broader vision for the corridor. And Alexandra, you look like you have something to add for sure.
No, actually, Stephen, you said it all and you said it very well. Thank you. Yeah, we are looking into the first and final mile, and we're very aware of the need to connect to those business parks and that there are shift workers there. And thank you for kind of confirming that for us. That was good to hear.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, if there's synergies, you know, with the business park here, at least I could speak, you know, and I mean, you know, if the costs are reasonable and you can secure the project funding, you know, paving a few hundred feet may not be very difficult, and you know, maybe the business park tenants would, you know, help offset some of the costs, you know, if I think that they're, you know, they would at least be willing to have that conversation. You know, that's what I would think. So anyway.
That's super helpful. And I mean, and that's great. I do want to point out, and I'll give you a little bit more into some of the background. We're actively working. You can see that railroad crossing of the BNSF, which is always a fun thing to do anything with the railroad. But anyway, we're working on coordinating with them to make the adjustment you can see here of the intersection. But during that coordination, we're also making sure that we can accommodate that crossing, because that's on its own, that could be a 2 or 3 year timeline just to get a bike path constructed next to a railroad, working through with the Public Utilities Commission and the railroad. So we're going to make sure that happens as part of this project. But that kind of brings up, I guess, the point I'm trying to make is sometimes the path part of it is the easy part, and it's the coordinating with the railroad, or it's coordinating whose land it is that we're putting the path on, and so on and so forth. And so, like, I think that's phenomenal that you guys might be interested in partnering, but it may be a question of the partnering plus who owns the land, and how do we make those connections where we're able to construct, you know, within someone's easement or right of way or what have you. So great to know, and more to talk about. And Alexandra, I know Boulder County is working on all those connections, so I'm assuming that's something you guys could follow up with them regarding.
Yes.
Awesome. All right, I'll pause here for a second just to see if there are any questions. And if not, maybe we'll move on to the third intersection I was hoping to go over today with everybody. All right. And then the last intersection we'll walk through, it should look similar but opposite, if you will, of the 63rd Street intersection. So this is at Niwot Road. You'll see here we have another BRT set of stations. This time, again, they're both on the same side, adjacent to the parking lot. In this case, I guess it's like the north side of the intersection, or the right-hand side. And just like 63rd, we're going to be you know, doing drainage and water quality improvements and detention improvements, and we're going to be putting in those queue bypass lanes. I think one thing that's a little bit different here, as you guys probably know well, there's an existing parking lot. There's an existing park and ride facility that will be removed and expanded, whereas at 63rd, we'll be constructing an entirely new facility. And again, all the kind of roadway traffic, bike and pedestrian connections, conversations that we've had with some of these other intersections. One thing I will say here with the bike lanes, I know there's always a lot of questions or comments about that. Niwot's another example where there are currently bike lanes along Niwot, and we won't be making any adjustments to those. Those bike lanes will remain as they exist today. So just not to cause any confusion at this location. And then again, we'll have a bikeway underpass and those spur connections you can see. And yeah, I think those are the highlights of Niwot. I can pause again and see if there's any questions here, or any other questions for improvements along the corridor. All right, I think now it's my turn to turn it back over to Adnana for some final thoughts.
Thank you, Stephen. Next slide, please.
Adnana, before you go on, we have another question from Melanie about the bike path in the median. Will there be a protective barrier along 119 in case cars go off the road?
Stephen, did you want to, that's, yeah, as kind of a road question. Did you want to take that, or do you want?
Yeah, I mean, I think the short answer is there's going to be protections where the bikeway may be close enough to the roadway where it's warranted. In areas where and now I'm going to get probably too technical, but in areas where the bikeway is outside of the clear zone, which is that space, that distance from the roadway where cars would be coming off the roadway and hopefully safely coming to a stop. As long as the bikeway is outside of those clear zones, we wouldn't have any protections. If the bikeway is coming up to or close to the roadway, we would be looking at putting in some sort of guardrail or barrier to protect the bikeway. I'll just say from the roadway side, we don't want to do that. We want to do that as little as possible, because putting another thing like guardrail out there is another hazard for drivers of the corridor. So we want to be sort of context sensitive and only use that in scenarios where we need to, or if we can't come up with a different design. But if it's warranted, we'll do it. But it is one of those things where it's like we put in the guardrail to protect the bikeway, and then we create an obstruction that cars are hitting. So we just kind of have to balance both sides of the equation. And Alexandra, I'm sure you maybe have more from the bikeway side.
Not really, but I did have a clarifying question. The clear zone, is that usually 30 feet or is that?
Clear zone depends on the roadway, the speed, the dimension of the shoulder. It varies. It may be 30 feet in most of the, I'm guessing it's around that distance or space in most of the corridor. But yeah, it varies. So I can't give you an exact answer, because I mean, we change speeds in the corridor, and not sure the shoulders are consistent either. So the clear zone's a little bit variable.
But just to give a ballpark of how far because oftentimes the bikeway will be in the very middle of the median distance from traffic.
And that's a really nice thing about 119, right? Is there is such a great amount of space between northbound and southbound, to where you can be 100 feet in some places away from either northbound or southbound, or even more than 100 feet, because there's such a good distance between the two. That's unique. That doesn't exist in a whole lot of places. So, yeah. All right, now I'm going to get back out of the way. Sorry, Nana.
No, you're fine. You're fine. That was a really good question. So going back to the schedule for these two projects. So both projects are based on what we already shared with you. This is a preliminary design phase, and we expect to complete final design in summer of 2023. So throughout our design, we have community advisory committee and equity advisory committee, and both of those committees have guided our projects and are providing crucial first-hand knowledge about this corridor. Construction of immediate project elements is targeted to begin in early 2024, and as we work through final design, we'll have more information about scheduling and construction impacts, and we will share that information with you at our final community meeting, which is anticipated in, again, the summer of 2023. Throughout these projects, we've been meeting regularly, like we mentioned that before, with our corridor partners, including City of Boulder, City of Longmont, and Commuting Solutions, and we look forward to continuing that coordination. Next slide, please. So our projects have an estimated cost of $122 million, and through agencies' contributions and grants, we have secured $91 million so far and are actively seeking the additional $31 million that are still needed to finish both projects. And when we go to bid for construction next year, we will build the project elements we have funding for, and these elements will include roadway safety, operational improvements, queue bypass lanes, parking rides, BRT station, and underpass for the bikeway. And as additional funding is secured, then we will build the remaining project elements to complete both projects. Next slide, please. So all meeting materials, and as I mentioned, we had first community meeting on June 27th. So all meeting materials have been placed on this website. And we are inviting you to sign up for project mailing list to receive updates about the project. However, there is, again, that website where you can submit comments by July 18th. And then FAQ document is being prepared as we speak, and as we receive those documents, we will make sure that all answers received are appropriately answered, and that document will be published early August. And final design community meeting again is scheduled or anticipated in summer of 2023. Next slide, please. And then I guess we had with the project context, I guess we will go back to Q&A, but I don't know if there's one more slide. Just wanna, yeah, there's a website, the two websites for each of the projects, and then also emails where you can contact us anytime with any additional questions or concerns that you have. If you'd like to talk about project and get the, as I said, the latest updates, we'll be happy to take those and answer them as we can. And now back to, I don't know, Alexandra, to address those questions again. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Adnana. Thanks everyone for the presentation. And thank you all for this long presentation on a Thursday morning. Is there any more thoughts on these questions that we asked earlier, or additional thoughts? Well, thank you all for it was really good, the discussion that we got into it during the middle of the presentation, and your comments are really helpful.
And I'd like to add, Alex, so once you receive the follow-up email from us, which will have the link to the URL that you can go to submit comments, we'd also like to encourage you to encourage your employees to submit comments that way. And again, they can do so through midnight, July 18th. We'd love to hear their perspective on how the design could be altered, if possible, to make it convenient for them to use to address those last mile connections. So you'll see that. And yes, please do advocate for us and encourage employees to provide their input.
Thank you, Amanda, for saying that. That's the more people we hear from that are using the corridor, just like everyone on this call, with those really kind of site specific information is really, really helpful. And as Stephen said, we can't address every single thing that we hear, but it's better to hear it all and then see if we can address it. And if we can make changes, or if it's already been decided or outside the scope of this project, because there is the realities of funding and decisions already made. And also, we also want to stick to the timeline of this project so we can get some really good improvements done in a relatively short time span. So please do send out that information to your employees and anyone else you know who may be interested.
Great. And are there any final burning questions before we say goodbye and give you an extra 20 minutes of your day?
Amanda, I just wanted to interject too that as BRT comes online, and as we're looking at that, the other thing that we're looking at is doing an on-demand shuttle as well in Gun Barrel to help with those first and final mile connections. So certainly everybody that's on this call, do feel free to reach out to BTC or the Boulder Chamber, any of the staff that's on this call for more information about that, and make sure that you're on our email list to get updates regarding that as well too, because that's something that we're working on to connect with the BRT as well.
And I'll include information about the Gun Barrel shuttle Karen's referencing, and a way to find out more information about it in the follow-up email.
And can I just chime in on one thing? So I think I just want to, because I feel it's a little mercurial in my foggy Thursday morning brain. The questions that people have that are great questions that are kind of beyond scope of our project, we're going to talk to City of Boulder and figure out what that link is for that. So just Amanda will send that in the follow-up. So I want to let you know that, like, we are figuring out where that is. So look up for the email from Amanda and we'll figure out kind of the path for that.
Thank you.
Rather than, and maybe it is info@cityofboulder.org, but I have a sense there's probably a better one than that. So we'll find it.
Yeah, definitely. I agree, Chrissy. Good call.
Yeah.
And I also want to just to add real quick, thank you all so much for having us here today. It's been a pleasure, and thanks for your interest in this project. And we're looking forward to, to provide this and deliver this project and make it again safer and more convenient for everybody who's using this corridor for their daily commute. So please submit your questions, and looking forward to more conversations, or at least community meeting next year.
I'd like to chime in on one thing that I probably missed on my piece of the presentation. If you can go back to slide 11 for just 1 second.
Just tell me when to stop, Ollie.
Go ahead, keep going. Just wanted to make sure to point this out. Okay, right here is good. So you see the diagonal, which is the scope of this project, basically from Hoover to the north and Foothills Parkway to the south. What RTD at the same time is going to start working on the design of is, you see those red bus logos within the cities of Boulder and Longmont. Those are going to be those designated BRT stops that we talked about, that were decided and got documented in the PEL. They will be going on along with that parking ride on North Longmont, and then the CU East Campus improvements will be in a parallel effort be implemented, so we have a full-blown BRT. I just wanted to point that out. It's like having two projects, one, the diagonal for the safety and mobility improvements project that we've been talking about through this presentation, and then everything else that we need to do within the cities. That's RTD only. So I just wanted to point that out.
Great.
And seconding everybody else, thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to speak to you and listen to you.
All right, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you, Ollie, and to all the staff for your great presentations, and to our attendees for your wonderful input. It's very much appreciated and will be carefully considered. So look forward to following up for you, and keep your eye out for that follow-up, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks. Take care, everybody.